I sought the peace I once had known and found a grove of saplings growing, and there the old man on his knees, still keeping goats, still planting trees. Sort the seeds one at a time and choose the best to sow. Plant them in this barren ground and pray that they might grow. Now I am old, tired and lame, but still the wild calls my name. And though he died many years ago, the old man's forest still grows and grows. They say the trees are ancient here, but I know a different story, dears. Each lovely tree in this beautiful land was planted one by one, by hand. Sow the seeds one at a time and choose the best to sow. Plant them in this barren ground and pray that they might grow.
Hello, Rick. Hello, Jen. We are blessed today. There were 4 men waiting in the waiting room because their wives were delivering babies. Nurse comes out and tells the first man, "Congratulations, you had twins." And he goes, "Twins, oh my gosh." And he goes, "Oh, that's really weird. I work for the Minnesota Twins." Wow. Next nurse comes out and tells the next guy, "Congratulations, you just had triplets." And he goes, "Oh, triplets, 3. That's really weird. I work for the 3M company." Next nurse comes out and goes to the next gentleman and says, "Congratulations, you had quadruplets, 4. And he goes, "Oh, that's weird. I work for the Four Seasons Hotel." And then they can hear this noise behind them, and they don't know what it is. They turn around, it's this man banging his head against the wall. And they said, "Mister, what's wrong?" And he said, "I work for 7-Up." Happy Father's Day. In Dr. Ken Gordon's message this week, he sends out a weekly message about the topic, and he made a comment that all of us are fathers in one way or another. Different things going on in our lives. But I have to say there's something different, specific about that masculine power energy that is in our environment when it's around us. You can really feel it. There are many cultures where the father or the oldest son, if the father is not around, is the head of the household. And this person is the one who will be the protector and the decision maker. So I believe that what Dr. Ken was saying is true in many aspects. And that's not to diminish single mothers or families who have chosen a different format for their family style. But I think what he's saying is true in that we all feel that need and that draw to be a presence for someone and to be a strong presence when it's needed. When I spoke on Mother's Day, I mentioned that all of us have had times in our lives where we used that feminine principle. We felt love for someone, and we felt that divine spark of love, and we nurtured as kids, even our little stuffed animal or our pet or our doll or our favorite toy truck. We had that feminine principle that we used because we all carry that. Well, we all also carry that masculine principle as well. I told you that in the beginning, at that moment of creation, We were all created with the same equal expression of masculine principle and the feminine principle. And that was done in a way that we equally used both of these parts of ourselves and our brains and the attitudes of that, the aspects of that. And one was never meant to overshadow the other or be overpowering of the other. The feminine principle is from the right brain, the masculine principle from the left brain. Those qualities, they were meant to be used together and in balance to create our lives and to support those people around us. And so we're happy to have both of that, and that's a very good thing. So there are those moments when our the dad or the head of the household steps forward to be that presence for someone in their family and to guide them. They are that perfect model for the sons and the daughters to learn how to use that masculine quality when it's important, how to use that power of their mind, how to make effective and efficient decisions. And that's when that comes forward. And I'm glad that's there. So I say Happy Father's Day to all the dads, all the granddads, all the little boys that want to be heroes one day. And it doesn't matter if it's Superman or Wonder Woman. It's all there. A Happy Father's Day to everyone. Here's to you. I'll be doing that because my throat is really dry today. Okay, so our topic today is conscious creative commitments. I'm going to use that frame a number of times throughout the talk because it's interesting how that shows up in our lives and we don't even realize it. So what is it to be conscious, to be awake and aware, to be creative with the ideas and the intuition that flows from us, or that's there available for us, and to go after what you really want, something you have passion for and you're willing to commit to it fully. That's the conscious creative commitment. Rumi says, let yourself be silently drawn to the strange pull of what you love. It will not lead you astray. When you do things from the soul, you feel that river moving in you. It is joy. Ayn Rand says, throughout the centuries, there were men who took first steps down new roads, armed with nothing but their own vision. So that's the basis of a story that I'm going to tell you about today. I want to tell you about a man who made a decision to change his life drastically. His name is Brian Widner. I saw this story on the internet a while ago, and there was even a documentary made about this man and everything that he had to go through to get to his goal. And maybe some of you know that story or have seen it as I go along. It is a story of courage, it's a story of accountability, and it's one of a very conscious, creative commitment. At the age of 14, Brian joined the skinhead white supremacist movement. He was a runaway, and they took him in. He was angry, and that fit his energy at the time. He was convinced that only white males were to rule the world and be in charge. They were against not only people of color, but also of faith, anything that was not what they were. Hatred and racism were his drugs that fueled him. Violence was the weapon that kept him in motion, and he was a true badass in every aspect. Tattoos were part of the lifestyle. He began to accumulate tattoos on his legs, his chest, the arm sleeves, his neck, and his face. You've seen people like that? That was him. Every tattoo told a story or represented a belief that he acquired. For 16 years, he lived this life of hate and violence, and he flowed right in that force of the supremacist movement. He did have a girlfriend, but she was also a member of the white supremacist movement. That word gets me every now and then. Her name was Julie. Brian ended up in jail for a while, and when he got out of jail, he married Julie, and they moved in together and with her 3 children that she had from a previous relationship. A year after they were married, they had a son. Brian had his own son. And when that happened, something clicked. Something shifted inside of him. And all of a sudden, he realized, he felt that he didn't fit that energy anymore of this life he'd had for the past 16 or so years. all of a sudden, he couldn't do the hate and the racism and the violence anymore, and he wanted out. He had had enough. He'd had enough of all of it, and he knew that it wasn't going to be easy to get out. He knew how easy it was to be influenced as a young person, and he didn't want that for his kids. He wanted to create something different, and that responsibility of a parent brought that forward. It woke him up. He wanted to be a role model, something he had not had. His wife fully supported him. She had been in the movement as well. They made a decision together to start over. So he wanted a new life for himself and his family. This was his clear, conscious choice, and he knew it was going to be a hard road. It took 6 years to unwind from the connections he had in the supremacist movement. It's not easy to break out of a gang, no matter where you are. They come after you. When you quit, you're a dead man as far as they're concerned, and they will persist. But he had made this conscious commitment for himself, but he had made it because of his family. So here was the next thing. He knew he had to do something about all these tattoos. Couldn't get a job, couldn't feed his family. And those tattoos carried that energy of all that negativity and that hate that he'd been living for so long. So something had to happen around that. It wasn't the image he felt, and it wasn't the image he wanted to portray anymore. They didn't have health insurance. They didn't have the funds it would take to go after the medical support to do the tattoo removal. It's pretty expensive. But he had that force inside of him, and he was willing to do anything. Julie and Brian researched different kinds of skin solutions, trying different kinds of things on their own. Nothing worked. He couldn't get the tattoos to go away. He'd even reached a point where he was going to put acid on his face because he didn't care what the damage it would do as long as those tattoos would go away. So can you see where we are in the story at this point? Brian became very conscious of the need and the pull within him to change, to do something. He followed it with passion and drive, and then it started to drive him. Remember the quote I just read about Rumi? Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you love. It will not lead you astray. When you do things from the soul, you feel that river moving inside you. Well, that river was carrying Brian, and we know that when water is in motion, it's powerful. So it had him, and he was fully committed to follow the voice of his soul. So now, how is this plan going to unfold? How is he going to take care of this? Well, Julie, from her side, began reaching out in desperation. She was really worried Brian was going to do something stupid and hurt his face. I made a statement last week in the talk that it was one of the Joseph Campbell quotes that when you follow your passion, doors open where there was once a wall. Well, when Julie made this decision, and of this desperation to do the research on her own, she ran right up against that wall. And she didn't know where to go. But she listened to her voice. And she figured out a way to create a new threshold for herself and her family to move through this. You see, Julie had been an active white supremacist herself. She'd been raised to also work against anyone of color or anyone of anything different from her. She knew that she had to make a connection with one particular man who was an African American. And everything that she had been taught was to hate this man in particular and to hate the African American race. So she had some work to do. This gentleman belonged to an anti-hate group that fought against the skinheads and the white supremacists, and they were sworn enemies. What was she going to do? So she did her work as best she could. She did some true forgiveness work, some deep work. She had to do her work to let go of that old life that taught her to only see those people in that place in one way. And it was time for her to figure out how to have fresh eyes to see this gentleman who was going to help her. And so she did that. She went back to the wall And when she got to the wall, the door was there. And she was able to reach through in that new threshold she created. And she found this man. And when he met with her, he didn't care who she was. He didn't care what her background had been. He saw her as a wife and a mother who was desperate to do anything for her family. And so he reached out to her and helped her. They connected in a whole new way through that new doorway, that new threshold that lifted both of them. He helped them with some guidance, some very important guidance to help them continue to break away from the skinhead movement and those people that were after them, gave them tips on how to live and, as things kind of moved along so they would stay safe. And then he also did something which was the next shift in their movement. He introduced them to the Southern Poverty Law Center. And these were going to be the people that would help him. But they would only help Brian if he would make a deal with them. So he had to make a deal that he would work with the police intelligence to start informing them about the skinhead movement and these supremacists and what was going on. And then they would help him get work with the tattoos. So of course he made the deal. So here we are again. He has listened to that voice. When we listen to that voice within, we make choices that are generated from that deepest divine nature. That's that spirit, that's that voice. That's where the passion and the power will assure us of the success that we're after. We keep telling you in a lot of our information, our talks, and our reading that when we follow that passion within us, the universe conspires to bring everything together that we need. And then we reach our goal. Well, this happened for Brian. He kept his commitment to his personal choice. He kept his commitment to his family. And he kept that sacred covenant with his soul. And that fed the fire of commitment that guaranteed to him what he needed was going to be there and show up at the right time. And that's conscious, creative commitment. So let me tell you about the piece of creativity. It's the intuition, and it's even synchronicity when things show up when you don't expect. The Southern Poverty Law Center found a doctor who was willing to do the tattoo removal. And then a donor stepped forward. A donor who believed that Brian deserved a second chance. I read this story so many times, I can't believe I'm going to get teary. But she donated $35,000 of her own money to pay for the tattoo removal and for the surgeries, plural. It took 25 laser surgeries to burn off the tattoos from his neck and his face. 25 surgeries, 16 months. But they were gone. He said the pain was the most excruciating thing he'd been through. It was even worse than what he'd been when he'd been in jail. But it was worth it. Like I said, he was willing to do anything, but it was like what he said. He affirmed he was willing to do anything to reach this goal. It was so important for him that one day his children would be proud of him, and he was a role model. What makes this story even more powerful is that Brian wasn't just anybody in a gang. Brian happened to be one of the most hated leaders in the skinhead movement. He was a powerhead. When he called into the Southern Poverty Law Center, they couldn't believe it. They felt like he was the Osama bin Laden of skinheads, and they were reaching out to him. They had nicknamed him the pit bull of skinheads. But he had to earn their trust. He had to prove that he wasn't faking it. And he had to prove that he was here to stay and to create a normal life for himself. And he had to be open, and he had to be vulnerable. Can you imagine someone who'd lived that lifestyle for that long, even being capable of being vulnerable? That's hard for some of us, even on a good day. So it's like, he did that. I brought my laptop. It's out on the table. Because if you would like to see who Brian was before the work and who Brian is today, I'm going to pull the pictures up for you. There's a series of pictures. And I would, excuse me, I would love to show there is a documentary about him. I would love to show it at our spiritual cinema night because it is a powerful process that he went through. And to me, it is something that is so clear about commitment and about accountability and about strength in what this person did. So, he's a good man today. He has a lot of guilt. He has nightmares. He worries about who he hurt because he doesn't remember. Sometimes he was drunk when he beat people up. And he feels really bad about that. He and his family are church people now, attending what they need to do in the community. But after the documentary came out, he had to hide his family because they still aren't finished looking for him, the gangs. So, the pictures are out there. It's pretty amazing. We all have a past. Some are richer than others. We've all had times in our lives or done things that we wished we had done differently or hadn't done at all. Or how can we change some of those things if we go back? But could you do what Brian did? I mean, that was deep. That was a lot. What do you think it feels like to have a desire that is so strong, so necessary, so passionately driving you to be so conscious in your choice that you would do anything to change your life that drastically? That's a lot. We make choices all the time out of emotions of things going on in our life, if we want something or if we want to change something. But could you do something that powerful? I don't know. I don't know. You don't know unless you're there in the moment to be so clear, so solid in the view. So we think about that. That's like one of those moments when your soul reaches out and kind of grabs your collar and says, hey, wake up. This is big. Do it. And when you make that commitment and say yes, everything falls into place for you. Very surprisingly. That's when the universe conspires to get you to your goal. So take a breath. If you feel like you want to, I'll open the pictures up when I go out there. And so during this week, we're going to make decisions every day, all day. Some are pretty mundane. What's for dinner, chicken or hot dogs? But take one day and just be slow about your choices for a moment. Think about them. And notice, well, I guess you couldn't help but notice. What if something happens that you have to make such a clear, deep, conscious choice about something where you're going to have to commit in that moment to something that's going to change your life? What would that be like? So you can just sit with that. So, it's a marvelous story, and it has a wonderful ending. So, let's just take something like that into prayer with us. As I close my eyes and go within the silence, I recognize that deep within is a space that's bigger and vast and deep, of that Creator that has made everything here. It is the space of that one mind and that one life that has reached out into everyone and everything that it has created. It has given the gift of choice. It has given the gift of free will. It has given the gift to each of its creations to create the life that they choose. And in that choice, there is a gift of love and guidance. And that's that voice within. I open to that voice. Every day I repeat my affirmation that I am open, that I receive the message of my guidance, so that my life can continuously move forward on the path that is for my greatest good and for the good of those around me. I open my life that I hear that guidance, that I can be a model in support of those around me. I know that for each father today. I know that for each mother. I know that for everyone. For it is that gift of spirit that lives within us that also calls in the host of angels to guide us and provide for us and help us to see what spirit has for us, to help us in every way. And that is the gift of life that we live here. And so I know as each individual moves forward in this week, there is that voice that they hear that is always there to guide them for their highest and best, that is always there to guide them in every conscious choice, that is always there to provide the intuition and the creativity for every new idea, and the power and the courage to commit. And how good that is to know the truth that that is always there, that we are never alone in our lives. We're never alone in any choice we have to make, because we're of that spirit that lives and moves and has its being right here. And so I'm grateful for this word. I'm grateful for the example that Brian has set for us and his family. I'm grateful to know that when we make a mistake, that we can change that and make amends. And so I know a great blessing for this. And so I know blessings for our center today, for every person here, for this city, for this state. I know blessings, great blessings upon our leaders of this country and of this world at this time. And know that all is in the expression of God. And so with a grateful heart, I let this be. I put the power into the word, knowing that it is done. And so together, knowing this joy, we say, and so it is.